It begins with a sound most people don't recognize until it's too late. The shaky intake of breath from someone who has already made up their mind. You can hear it before you understand it. You can sense it before you see anything at all. And when the camera flips on, when the live stream counter starts ticking up, the first sentence is one that will haunt an entire town. Don't look away now. You wanted to see something real. Those were the first words the audience heard the night everything in Marrow Creek shifted from ordinary to irreversible. No one watching knew what was coming. Nobody understood that a door had already closed, and the person holding the phone wasn't asking for attention. He was promising an ending. But before that night, there was a day. A normal day. The last one anyone involved would ever get. Ryan Olander woke up early, just after 6 a.m., as he always did. He was 34, a father of 2 girls, 9 and 11, who believed their dad could fix anything. Broken toys, bad dreams, entire worlds. He smelled like cedarwood soap, motor oil, and that faint trace of laundry detergent you only notice on someone who actually washes their clothes at home instead of a laundromat. His daughters liked hugging him just to inhale that scent. They said it smelled safe. He worked as a maintenance supervisor at the Marrow Creek Community Center, the kind of job that didn't pay much but kept the lights on. He didn't complain. Ryan wasn't wired that way. He was steady, patient, and good at remembering tiny promises, like the one he made that morning. He stood in the kitchen pouring cereal when his youngest daughter asked if he could come to her school's talent show next week. She was singing a cover of a pop song she barely understood, but it didn't matter. She only cared that he'd be there. "I wouldn't miss it for the world," he said. He kissed her forehead, ruffled her sister's hair, and grabbed his tool bag. Before he left, he recorded a quick voicemail for his girlfriend, Brielle Cormack. She wasn't awake yet. His voice was sleepy, but smiling. "Hey, Brie, just checking in. I'll see you later this afternoon. Don't forget we promised the girls pizza night. Love you." It was the kind of voicemail nobody deletes until they have to. On the surface, everything looked normal. The neighbors waved as he backed out of the driveway. He drove the same route, passed the same gas station, listened to the same morning radio show that recycled jokes like clockwork. Routine held his world together. Predictability made him comfortable. He had no reason to imagine that while he went to work, another man was thinking about him. Obsessing, really. Rehearsing scenarios. Practicing the way his voice would sound once it was broadcast to an audience he believed he deserved. Villains rarely begin as monsters. They start as people who feel ignored. Brielle Cormack entered Ryan's life a few months earlier. She was 26, soft-spoken, unpredictable in a way that made her interesting to people who should have known better. Ryan liked her calmness, the way she listened, the way she seemed impressed by ordinary kindness. But Brielle had a past she didn't talk much about, a shadow that followed her. His name was Jaxon LeRoux. And for reasons Ryan didn't understand yet, Jaxon didn't see Brielle as an ex-girlfriend. He saw her as unfinished business.
While Ryan was tightening bolts on a water heater that morning, Jaxon was already awake. He hadn't slept. His mind hadn't slowed in weeks. He sat in a room cluttered with empty energy drink cans and notebooks filled with fragmented thoughts, half arguments, half manifestos, all pointing toward a conclusion he didn't dare speak aloud yet. He scrolled through old photos of Brielle, pausing on the ones where she smiled. It didn't matter that the relationship was over. In his mind, it wasn't. It couldn't be. Something had been taken from him, and he believed someone had to pay. He whispered a phrase he'd been repeating like a prayer, a mantra, a warning. If I can't move on, nobody gets to. It didn't sound angry. It sounded decided. Later that afternoon, while Ryan laughed with a coworker about a broken vending machine that ate his dollar, Brielle texted him a simple message. "We need to talk tonight. Something's wrong." She didn't know it yet, but the moment she hit send, a fuse was lit. Ryan wouldn't check the message until much later. By then, the evening would already be changing shape. Invisible lines were closing in around him, around her, around the man they both hoped had moved on. But Jaxon LeRoux never moved on. He just waited for the right time to make sure nobody else could.
The story of Ryan, Brielle, and Jaxon was not a story of sudden violence. It was a story of small obsessions, repeated patterns, and warnings no one wanted to hear. The three of them formed a triangle, one side stable and predictable, the other two shifting and unstable, drawn together by desire, jealousy, and unspoken threats. Brielle Cormack had met Jaxon LeRoux a few years before Ryan entered her life. Jaxon was magnetic, in a way that made people forgive his intensity. He was charming, articulate, and persistent. He could make a person feel like they were the only one in the world. But there was a shadow behind that charm, a tendency to escalate even minor slights into imagined betrayals. His anger simmered quietly, unnoticed, until it had weight. And when he felt threatened, he did not step back. He stepped forward, methodically, coldly. Ryan came along later, steady, reliable, good with kids, not flashy. To Brielle, he was a safe harbor. He made her laugh. He reminded her what normal felt like. For Ryan, the attraction was simple. She was kind, gentle, someone who appreciated the ordinary. He never realized that the ordinary could be so fragile when measured against obsession. Jaxon, however, never left. He monitored. He calculated. He would show up unexpectedly, always within line of sight, testing boundaries. He sent messages that were affectionate, then possessive, then threatening, all without leaving any visible traces that would make sense to outsiders. A text one day could be, "I hope your night is as calm as mine," almost innocuous. The next it would be, "Remember, some people never forgive." Brielle tried to navigate both worlds. With Ryan, she had safety. With Jaxon, she had history and danger. She never told Ryan everything, not because she wanted to hurt him, but because some truths have edges sharp enough to cut through ordinary days. And she could feel it, that invisible pressure, the sense that Jackson's world and hers were orbiting one another like two storms on a collision course. 2 weeks before the night the world would witness what happened, Ryan began noticing something unusual. A friend at work mentioned that Jaxon had been asking about him. Ryan brushed it off at first. He assumed people talked. He assumed Jaxon had moved on. But then came the incident with the prescription pills. Small, unremarkable, the kind of thing people dismiss. Ryan needed them for back pain, and Jaxon had demanded them through Brielle, claiming ownership as if possession extended beyond the living. Words were exchanged that left Ryan unsettled. "You shouldn't have done that," Jaxon said over text, a few days before the confrontation. "I warned you." Ryan didn't respond. He didn't think he had to. But when Jaxon showed up that evening behind the mill, words escalated quickly. The argument, brief and tense, left Ryan with a cold realization. This man was not going to take no for an answer. The presence of Brielle complicated everything, but it was Ryan's sense of responsibility, his desire to protect, that tied him into the center of the triangle. Jaxon began to speak openly about consequences. He spoke to friends in casual tones that suggested inevitability, not anger. "People don't listen until they see," he would say. "I'll make sure they all see." Ryan had no inkling that he was the focal point of those words. Jackson's friends didn't take him seriously, and neither did Brielle at first. Obsession, after all, masquerades as intensity. Only later do the cracks show, and by then, the danger is already too large to contain. Brielle's role was complicated. She had loved both men at different times in different ways. She had tried to warn Ryan after the confrontation, but hesitation and fear paralyzed her. She didn't want to believe that someone she once cared about could become a threat of unimaginable magnitude. She wanted normal. She wanted protection. She wanted to believe that the triangle could resolve itself. That was the quietest part of danger, the part that lulls you into thinking nothing will happen.
And yet, over those 2 weeks leading to February 23, small signs began to pile up. Jaxon appearing at local stores when Brielle visited, silent observation, cryptic social media posts, and fragments of voice messages left for no one in particular. The messages never mentioned Ryan by name. They didn't need to. Jaxon knew that he didn't have to spell everything out. He only needed to make the world aware that he was watching and that he had plans. Ryan, busy at work, never noticed the pattern until it was almost too late. Routine became his armor, but Jaxon had already mapped it. Predictability was no longer a comfort, it was a vulnerability. By the evening of February 23, Jaxon had rehearsed in his mind for hours, calibrating the timing, envisioning the path, imagining the audience, imagining the camera, imagining Ryan's confusion, imagining Brielle's fear. Every variable accounted for, every potential interruption considered. In those quiet moments before the storm, the triangle's edges hardened. Brielle attempted a text message to Jaxon, something casual, meant to probe. "Are you okay? You've been quiet." He responded almost instantly. "Quiet is how I watch. Don't interfere." There was no warmth. There was no empathy. Only intent. The intention was already in motion. Ryan, by contrast, was focused on the mundane, locking tools, ensuring his daughters had everything they needed, and preparing for the small rituals of the evening. Homework, dinner, bedtime stories. The ordinary measures of love and responsibility were powerless against the coming disturbance. And so the triangle balanced, precarious and tense, one side grounded in stability, one side drifting in obsession, one side caught between the two, unaware of how fragile life had already become. When Jaxon finally made his move, it wouldn't feel sudden, it would feel inevitable. The pieces had been moving quietly for weeks, and now, all at once, the triangle would collapse.
Two weeks before the night that would forever change Marrow Creek, the confrontation that everyone would later call the OxyContin incident occurred. Ryan had no idea it would matter. He had done nothing wrong. He simply existed in a space Jaxon had already marked as his own. It began in the parking lot behind the community center, where Ryan sometimes went to speak privately with colleagues. Jaxon was waiting. He stepped out of his car slowly, as though rehearsing each movement, each syllable. There was a calmness to him, but it was a calm that belonged to predators, not ordinary men. "Those pills," Jaxon said, voice steady, almost casual. "They should have been mine. Brielle knows it. You know it. Don't deny it." Ryan shook his head, trying to diffuse the tension. "You're imagining things. I don't owe you anything. Brielle doesn't owe you anything." Jackson's lips tightened. "Imagination is for people who lose. I don't lose, and neither does anyone who gets in my way." There was no raising of fists yet, no shouting, but Ryan noticed the way Jackson's eyes narrowed, the slight twitch in his jaw, the subtle flex of fingers around an invisible handle. It was the kind of threat that doesn't need to be spoken aloud. Words were just punctuation. The real message was in the stillness. They parted without physical violence that day, but the air lingered thick with intent. Jaxon didn't just leave, he calculated. He left knowing Ryan had seen enough to recognize unease, but not enough to predict what was coming. And that calculation would repeat itself every day for the next 2 weeks. During that period, Jackson's behavior escalated in ways subtle yet unnerving. He sent voice messages to friends, not asking for help, but almost rehearsing confessions in advance. "I'm going to make sure everyone sees what happens when you ignore me," he said in one recording, tone casual, almost conversational, as if telling a story rather than a plan. Another message went, "People will know my name. They always do. They just don't know when yet." Friends, at first, laughed off these messages. They assumed bravado, adolescent obsession, a boy unable to manage disappointment. But the casualness of his delivery, the certainty in his words, carried a weight that became more apparent with every passing day. He didn't threaten for reaction. He threatened for inevitability. By February 20th, the next step in his preparation was obvious to anyone reviewing the security footage later, though nobody saw it at the time. Jaxon went to the local Walmart in Marrow Creek. The clock read 7:18 p.m. He walked calmly to the sporting goods section, scanning the aisles with quiet calculation. He selected a Midland Pro-Line composite bat, $29.88. Not the cheapest, not the most expensive. Balanced in weight, unremarkable to a casual observer. But for Jaxon, it was a tool, and its purchase was a ritual of commitment.
He left the store with a cart full of incidental items, snacks, a soda, some batteries, but the bat was what mattered. He had tested its weight in his hands before leaving, a small smile crossing his face as he imagined the efficiency of its use. CCTV cameras would later show him pausing briefly, holding it upright, testing balance, almost like a musician adjusting a bow. It was the quiet assurance of someone who had already rehearsed the performance in his mind countless times. 2 nights before the tragedy, he made a post on SnapPost, a social platform he used intermittently. It read simply, "Tonight, somebody dies." No emoji, no explanation, just certainty, bare and direct. Within hours, another post followed. "Don't call me crazy later. I warned everybody." These messages were not cryptic for thrill. They were warnings, rehearsals for a stage that only he could envision. Brielle, seeing them, felt unease, but didn't yet comprehend the danger. Ryan didn't see them. By the time anyone would piece together the significance, it was already too late. The hours leading up to February 23rd were meticulously plotted. Jaxon tracked Ryan's schedule, his commute, his predictable stops. Every variable had been considered. By 8:55 p.m., he parked across from Ryan's driveway, the bat hidden but within reach,
the phone in his hand ready to stream. Every heartbeat, every glance, every streetlight was part of his plan. The pattern of escalation was clear. 2 weeks of rehearsed threats, cryptic social media warnings, repeated observation, purchase of the bat, and rehearsals captured on video. He was calm, methodical, almost boringly precise. But beneath the mundane movements was the slow gathering of storm energy. When a person plans for 2 weeks in such a detailed and relentless way, inevitability follows. By 8:22 p.m., Jaxon had his camera ready. He would title the stream simply, "Watch This." The platform's counter ticked up. Nobody in Marrow Creek understood the full weight of what they were about to witness. He had waited, observed, and rehearsed every comment he might receive, every word Ryan might speak. Every small motion that could interrupt his performance had already been anticipated. This was not a crime of passion. It was a crime of obsession, timed and choreographed, a calculation executed with almost surgical precision. And at this moment, the ordinary evening, the ordinary lives of Ryan and his family were suspended on a thread.
February 23rd began like any other day in Marrow Creek. Ryan Olander drove to work, greeted neighbors, and reminded his daughters that he would be home for pizza night. The mundane world hummed along, unaware of the shadow stalking one of its residents. Jaxon LeRoux had already set his plan in motion. He spent the afternoon moving through the town quietly, almost invisibly. By late afternoon, he returned to the Walmart where he had purchased the bat days earlier. He lingered near the sporting goods section, pretending to browse fishing gear while checking the balance and weight of the bat again. To a casual observer, it was an ordinary shopper testing merchandise. But Jackson's mind was elsewhere. He was rehearsing. He visualized Ryan walking, unsuspecting, the phone capturing every moment. Every detail mattered. At 6:14 p.m., he made a final Snapchat post. The text read simply, "Tonight, somebody dies." He added a black background, no filter, no emoji, just the certainty of inevitability. A small notification blinked on his phone. A friend had commented on an older post. He read it aloud to himself. "You wouldn't dare." He laughed softly. "Watch me," he whispered. He returned to his car and drove slowly toward Ryan's neighborhood, circling blocks with quiet patience. He parked a few streets away and waited. He checked the phone repeatedly, ensuring the live stream would work. He even tested angles on the camera, practicing framing. This was more than obsession. It was ritual. By 7:30 p.m., Ryan had returned home. He walked into the house carrying groceries, talking to his daughters about homework and dinner. Brielle had arrived shortly after, ostensibly to discuss plans for the weekend. She noticed nothing unusual at first. Jaxon had not yet made himself visible. At 7:50 p.m., Jaxon moved into position. He called Brielle's phone first, a quick check to ensure Ryan was alone. Then he initiated the live stream. The camera's red light blinked on, and he whispered into it. "It begins." From 7:50 p.m. until 8:42 p.m., he stalked Ryan quietly, making small gestures, positioning himself so the camera captured everything he wanted. The live stream recorded every footstep, every glance, and every reaction from Ryan, as if documenting a rehearsal for an audience that could not yet understand the gravity of what they were seeing. During this hour, Jaxon interacted with viewers in real time, reading comments aloud. "You can't do this," someone wrote. He smiled. "I already am," he responded. Another comment, "Why are you filming?" Jaxon read it, almost mockingly, "So you all can witness what happens when people ignore warnings." Every movement, every whispered phrase, Every calculated step was performed with precision. Jaxon never raised his voice. He never faltered. The audience, hundreds of them online, watched without fully realizing they were witnessing the first live-streamed act of violence in the nation. The comments continued to scroll, some in disbelief, some in horror, and he read 6 or more of them aloud, as if narrating a story only he understood. Brielle, meanwhile, watched from a nearby room, the phone in her hand. She recorded a short clip of Jaxon pacing, murmuring to the camera, warning viewers. "I warned everybody. Don't call me crazy later," she heard him say. She didn't know then that this recording would later become critical evidence. By 8:35 p.m., Ryan realized something was off. He turned toward the living room and saw Jaxon, bat in hand, filming. Panic, confusion, and disbelief registered on his face, but it was too late. Jaxon had rehearsed every angle. Every reaction had been predicted. The live stream captured it all, and the comment section exploded as viewers tried to process what they were seeing.
As the final minutes approached, Jaxon paused to read another comment aloud. "Stop it! You'll regret this." He smiled, almost conversational. Regret comes too late. And then, after 17 minutes of deliberate movements, quiet threats, and ritualized preparation, he stepped back. The bat lowered. The stream began to end. His final words to the audience were calm, detached. "Now you know. Don't say I didn't warn you." At 8:42 p.m., the live stream ended. Phones buzzed. Viewers tried to call authorities. The local police received frantic reports almost immediately, but the world had already witnessed something no one could unsee. Jackson's movements after the stream were precise. He left the house, carrying the bat as casually as someone carrying an umbrella. He made his way to the Walmart parking lot where he had parked, blending into the crowd, already calculating the narrative that would accompany his arrest. The hours leading up to the live stream had been a meticulous choreography of obsession, rehearsal, and ritual. From Snapchat posts to Walmart trips, from silent monitoring to repeated threats, every action had been designed to bring inevitability to life. And for the first time, a crime was being experienced simultaneously by a remote audience, each viewer bearing witness in real time to a reality no one should have ever been forced to see. The live stream itself lasted exactly 17 minutes. 17 minutes of quiet dread, calculated movements, and an audience unaware of the historical significance of what they were witnessing. Jaxon LeRoux did not raise his voice. He did not shout. He spoke in a calm, measured tone, as if recounting a story to a class rather than committing an act of violence. From the first minute, he positioned the camera so that the room was framed carefully. Ryan Olander moved naturally, checking the living room, adjusting chairs, unaware that the camera had been live for over a minute. Comments began to appear almost immediately. "What's happening?" one viewer wrote. Jaxon glanced at the screen, read it aloud, and chuckled softly. "You're about to see what happens when warnings are ignored." A few minutes in, another comment, "Stop, call the police." His response, calm and deliberate, "Police won't arrive in time. You'll see." Brielle Cormack, holding her own phone in a separate room, recorded a silent clip. She whispered to herself, "Please, just stop." Jaxon did not notice. He continued pacing slightly, bat in hand, narrating to his audience. "Some people think they can ignore me. They can't. Not anymore." At around the 4th minute, he addressed the camera directly. "You're all witnesses. You'll remember this forever." He picked up a small object, spun it in his hand as he spoke, emphasizing the deliberate nature of every movement. Every glance at the phone, every shift of weight, every pause was rehearsed. 6 minutes in, a comment appeared, "Why are you filming this?" He read it aloud with a quiet smile. "So you can understand
the consequences of choices, so you can see what happens when people cross me." Another comment, "He's scared." Jaxon responded without hesitation, "Fear is part of the lesson. Remember that." By the 9th minute, Ryan had begun to understand the gravity of the situation. Panic flickered in his eyes, hesitation in his movements. But Jaxon had anticipated it all. He kept the camera steady, narrating quietly, reading comments aloud as if reading lines from a script. "Wow, people actually think I'll stop. Watch closely. This is what I do." At 12 minutes, a viewer wrote, "Someone call 911. Jaxon smiled faintly and read it aloud, "Already in progress, but not fast enough. You'll all witness history." Brielle, meanwhile, whispered to herself, trying to maintain distance, recording Jaxon's movements on her phone for evidence. "I need this proof. Please, just stop," she said. Her fear was palpable, but she stayed hidden, silent and observant.
By the 15th minute, the tension in the room had reached its peak. Every movement slowed. Jaxon addressed the camera directly one last time. "Do you understand now? I warned everybody. You saw it. You remember it." His voice was calm, almost conversational, and he lowered the bat as the final seconds approached. The last 30 seconds were precise. Jaxon stepped back, setting the bat down, and gave his final line to the audience. "Now you know. Don't say I didn't warn you." Then, the red light blinked off. The live stream ended. Phones buzzed. Viewers called authorities. Social media erupted. Within minutes, police were on the scene. A foot chase ensued as Jaxon attempted to leave the house and blend into the night. He moved with calculated calm, but law enforcement was already converging. He reached his car in the Walmart parking lot, the same location where he had purchased the bat days earlier. When an officer asked, "Why did you live stream it?" he responded plainly, "So people could watch, so they'd know what happens when you ignore me." Brielle's recordings, coupled with viewer testimony, provided authorities with a clear record of premeditation and intent. The live stream, preserved despite being removed hours later, became evidence that would define the case. The event was unprecedented. No one had ever documented a murder live on a social platform in real time. No one had ever watched history unfold with such chilling immediacy. In the immediate aftermath, Ryan's daughters were shielded from the news as best as possible, but fragments leaked. Facebook had left the video online for nearly 6 hours. In that time, several friends, family members, and local residents saw portions of it. The implications were staggering. A crime had become a public spectacle in the span of minutes. Meanwhile, investigators discovered hundreds of deleted videos on Jaxon's phone, practice clips, recordings of him holding the bat, rehearsing lines, and simulating threats. 4 specific clips stood out. In one, he spoke directly to an empty room, repeating, "They'll all see." In another, he held the bat, pacing for 10 minutes, measuring his stance. A third clip showed him recording shadows on the wall, whispering, "Timing is everything." The fourth captured him laughing softly as he replayed a previous comment from social media, "You can't do this." Jaxon mimicked the audience's disbelief, practicing detachment and calm simultaneously. Each clip, mundane in isolation, became terrifying when viewed in context. They showed a mind meticulously planning and rehearsing the unimaginable.
The courtroom at Coldwater Parish Courthouse was silent, almost reverent, as the proceedings unfolded in 2020. Jaxon LeRoux, now 24 at the time of sentencing, sat with the same calm detachment he had shown during the live stream. The weight of his actions, however, was undeniable. He pleaded guilty to second-degree murder. No theatrics, no last-minute protest, only acceptance of the inevitable outcome of his meticulous planning. The judge, reading from prepared notes, sentenced him to 40 years in Redwater State Penitentiary. No parole. Every word measured, every pause deliberate. The sentence reflected both the severity of the crime and the unprecedented nature of the live-streamed act. When asked again about the live stream, Jackson's reply was chilling in its simplicity. So people could see. Brielle Cormack faced charges as well, though her involvement was significantly less direct. She pleaded guilty to obstruction of justice and accessory. She served 18 months in a local facility and was released in 2022. Following her release, she legally changed her name and vanished from public record. Authorities have not reported her whereabouts since. By late 2025, Jaxon was 29, still in general population at Redwater. Despite the severity of his crime, he received fan mail, letters calling him a legend, expressions of fascination that highlighted the cultural shockwave his live stream had caused. Meanwhile, Ryan's daughters, now 12 and 14, continued to live with the aftershocks of trauma. Therapy sessions, careful supervision, and protective measures had helped them survive, but nothing could erase the memory of what they had lost. The case had immediate implications beyond the personal tragedies. Social media platforms, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, were forced to create 24/7 live response teams. Policies were rewritten to detect violent behavior in real time. Automated alerts were tested, and priority reporting protocols established. The precedent set by Marrow Creek made it clear: live streaming could no longer be treated as casual entertainment when the stakes were human life. Even years later, the echoes of that night remain. The live stream, the comments, the rehearsed steps, the chilling calm of a man who had mapped every possible outcome, these details continued to haunt the memory of a town, a family, and the viewers who witnessed history in real time. And so we end with a quiet reminder: the ordinary, the mundane, can be shattered in minutes. The people we trust to live alongside us can harbor intentions we cannot perceive until it is too late. Routine, habit, and familiarity are fragile shields. Vigilance, awareness, and the understanding that obsession often hides behind charm are sometimes all that prevent tragedy.
At 90. If this case left you speechless, do 3 things right now. Smash that like button, subscribe, and turn on the bell for new cases. And in the comments, one word only: death penalty or life. I read every single one. This is Crime Ledger. We'll see you in the dark.